boogity.
There he goes.
Boogity, boogity.
And he ain't wearing no clothes.
Oh, yes, they call him the street.
We found 20 hilariously bad number one songs from the 1970s, packed with bizarre lyrics, wild celebrity moments, and jaw-dropping sales. The last one is pure chaos you can't imagine. Kicking things off at number 20, You're Having My Baby, Paul Anka with Odia Coates, 1974. A 1950s teen idol returns, but instead of swooning teenagers, he delivers a ballad many called the most cringe-worthy hit of the decade. In August 1974, Paul Anka's duet with Odia Coates spent 3 weeks at number 1 on Billboard, selling over 1 million copies. Written in under 20 minutes, it's meant as a tender tribute to fatherhood, but critics brand it chauvinistic during the height of women's liberation. Gloria Steinem publicly ridicules it. Anka, unfazed, calls it a love song, nothing more. Yet, the more radio played it, the more letters of protest poured in. Still, it dominates easy listening stations, cementing Anka's chart comeback. And somewhere in the background, Frank Sinatra sends a quiet note of approval, proof that old Hollywood still had his back. Our next entry proves you can hide scandalous lyrics in the friendliest melodies and still walk away with a Grammy.
I can see it in your eyes, I'm happy knowing that you're having my baby.
Heading into number 19, Afternoon Delight, Starland Vocal Band, 1976. It sounds like a Sunday picnic, but it's actually about sneaking away for daytime sex. Released in June 1976, Afternoon Delight reaches number 1 on Billboard Hot 100, pushing Elton John off the top spot. Written by Bill Danoff, who co-wrote Take Me Home Country Roads for John Denver, it's recorded in Washington, D.C. in just a few takes. The group performs it in pastel outfits on The Mike Douglas Show, convincing some viewers it's harmless folk pop. Yet church groups protest, calling it a bad influence disguised in harmonies. The song still wins the Grammy for Best New Artist, a category that famously curses careers. Within 2 years, the band fades, and their only other chart entry barely scraping the top 50. Danoff later admits he was surprised radio didn't catch the meaning faster. Our next song takes Strange to another level. Love lyrics sung from the point of view of two muskrats.
We can make a lot of loving for the sun gone down. Thinking of you's working.
Sliding in at number 18, Muskrat Love, Captain and Tennille, 1976. Two chart veterans, Daryl Dragon and Tony Tennille, turn a love song about rodents into a top 5 hit. Originally written by Willis Allen Ramsey in 1972, America records it first in 1973. Captain and Tennille's 1976 cover peaks at number 4 on Billboard Hot 100, selling over 500,000 copies. They perform it at the White House for Queen Elizabeth II during the U.S. bicentennial visit. Yes, actual synthesizer muskrat chatter in front of royalty. Critics pan it as a Disney B-side gone wrong, but fans of their TV variety show make it a soft rock staple. Dragon programs the ARP synthesizer to mimic rodent squeaks live, a novelty that charms some and horrifies others. Next, Novelty steps fully into the disco boom, with a talking duck leading the charts.
And they whirl and they twirl and they tango.
Let's move forward to number 17, Disco Duck, Rick Dees and his cast of idiots, 1976. A Memphis radio DJ creates a disco song with a quacking duck voice and sells over 6 million copies worldwide. Rick Dees, then hosting mornings on WMPS, records it in Nashville for $400. Released in September 1976, it spends 1 week at number 1 on Billboard. His own station bans him from playing it, fearing conflict of interest. The duck voice is Dees himself, sped up and layered with comic timing. Featured briefly in Saturday Night Fever, the track is omitted from the soundtrack album. Bee Gees manager Robert Stigwood reportedly disliked novelty cuts. The record earns Dee's national fame, leading to a decades-long Hollywood career hosting Solid Gold and weekly Top 40. Now we trade ducks for CB radios and a trucker anthem that became a bicentennial craze. Rolling along to number 16, Convoy, C.W. McCall, 1975. In late 1975, America falls for trucker slang and CB radio culture. Convoy, recorded by advertising exec William Dale Fries under the name C.W. McCall, hits number 1 on both Billboard Hot 100 and country charts in January 1976. Selling over 2 million copies, it spawns a 1978 Chris Christopherson film. Lyrics like Breaker 19 and 10-4 good buddy leap from truck stops to everyday conversation. Fries never tours extensively, preferring his ad agency work. The track wins Country Music Association's Single of the Year. Critics call it hokey, but admit it captures the 70s fascination with independent, rebellious truckers. The next entry ditches grit for a sing-along so sugary it pairs a grown man with a child singer.
Well, we shot the line, we went for broke, with 1,000 screaming trucks and 11 long-haired friends of Jesus in a chartreuse.
Moving on to number 15, Playground in My Mind, Clint Holmes, 1973. Released in 1972, this soft pop single takes nearly a year to reach number 2 on Billboard in 1973. Clint Holmes duets with 7-year-old Philip Vance, son of lyricist Paul Vance, singing about marbles, candy, and childhood friends. Holmes, a regular on the Merv Griffin Show, records it in New York with minimal instrumentation to highlight the sweet but divisive vocals. Critics call it relentlessly saccharine, yet it sells over 1 million copies. Philip Vance never earns royalties despite his performance, a fact revealed decades later. Holmes uses the fame to secure a Las Vegas residency, but the single remains his only major hit. And now, the countdown moves to a tearjerker so drenched in sentiment, it was once voted both beloved and most hated. Dropping in at number 14, Honey, Bobby Goldsboro, 1968, 70s reissue. A ballad so sugary it divided audiences for decades. Written by Bobby Russell and recorded by Bobby Goldsboro in one take in 1968, Honey tells the story of a young wife's death. It held number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 for 5 weeks in 1968, sold over 5 million copies worldwide, and re-entered charts during early 70s reissues. The track was so sentimental that humorist Dave Barry later listed it among the worst songs ever written. Despite that, it earned multiple BMI songwriting awards and was covered by Dean Martin, Andy Williams, and even Tammy Wynette. Goldsboro's Hollywood ties extended beyond music. He scored the Burt Reynolds sitcom Evening Shade in the 90s. He always defended the song as pure love. Next is a love ballad so famous it sparked a plagiarism trial that rewrote its legacy.
Now all I have are memories of honey, and I wake up nights and call her name. Now my life's an empty stage where honey lived and honey played, and love grew up.
Sliding on to number 13, Feelings, Morris Albert, 1975. Brazilian singer-songwriter Morris Albert scores a worldwide hit with Feelings in 1975, reaching number 6 on the Billboard Hot 100 and charting in over a dozen countries. Its soaring chorus makes it a wedding favorite until a court case changes everything. French composer Louis Gastet sues, alleging the melody was lifted from his 1950s work, Pour Toi. After years of litigation, Albert concedes, and Gastet is awarded royalties. Even with its parody status in pop culture, the song has been covered by more than 100 artists, including Barbra Streisand and Johnny Mathis. Critics blast it as empty emotion, but easy listening stations kept it alive for decades. Albert later retreats from public life, living quietly in Italy. Up next is a prison-inspired sing-along that accidentally became a national symbol.
Feelings like I've never lost you, and feelings like I've never...
Coming in at number 12, Tie a Yellow Ribbon Round the Old Oak Tree. Tony Orlando and Dawn, 1973. Released in February 1973, this Tony Orlando and Dawn single dominates Billboard for 4 weeks, selling over 3 million copies. Inspired by a Reader's Digest story about a prisoner's return home, it turns the yellow ribbon into a symbol of waiting and forgiveness. Orlando's TV variety show helps the song spread, and by the 1980s, yellow ribbons become a national emblem for hostages and troops abroad. Written by Erwin Levine and L. Russell Brown, it's recorded in New York with a minimal budget but maximal radio impact. Despite popularity, some stations temporarily pull it due to overexposure. Orlando later performs it at multiple political events, cementing its cultural imprint. The next track is the biggest selling single of its year, and one of the most derided.
Oak tree, it's been 3 long years. Do you still want me?
Still want me?
Now at number 11, You Light Up My Life, Debbie Boone, 1977. Debbie Boone, daughter of Hollywood icon Pat Boone, records You Light Up My Life in 1977 for a film soundtrack written by Joseph Brooks. It spends 10 consecutive weeks at number 1, a Billboard record at the time, and wins the Grammy for Best New Artist. The single sells over 5 million copies worldwide, yet Boone admits she never felt a personal connection to it. Critics call it emotionally flat, but its crossover success to adult contemporary charts cements it as a wedding staple. Brooks' later legal scandals cast a shadow over the song's legacy. Boone uses her fame to pivot into Christian music, where she builds a new career. And the next hit? A chart topper so goofy, its own singer later said he wished he could erase it.
And you light up my life.
Let's roll into number 10, Knock 3 Times, Tony Orlando and Dawn, 1970. In late 1970, Tony Orlando and Dawn released Knock 3 Times as a follow-up to Candida. Written by L. Russell Brown and Erwin Levine, the song tells the story of a man signaling interest to the woman upstairs by knocking on the ceiling or banging on the pipes. It's recorded in a single day in New York with session singers backing Orlando. By January 1971, it hits number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100, sells over 6 million copies worldwide, and becomes the top-selling single of the year in the US. Critics dismiss it as bubblegum pop at its most literal, yet it dominates both AM radio and jukeboxes. Orlando admits decades later that he found it embarrassing, but acknowledges its role in launching the group's TV career. The next chart topper proves you can repeat one nonsense phrase dozens of times and still make a fortune.
I can hear your music playing. I can feel your fire.
Now, on to number 9, Chirpy Chirpy Cheep Cheep, Mac and Katie Kissoon, 1971. British sibling duo Mac and Katie Kissoon take Chirpy Chirpy Cheep Cheep to number 1 in the UK in 1971, though in the US, it's Middle of the Roads version that charts. Written by Lally Stott, the song's nonsensical chorus repeats the title more than 30 times, making it an instant earworm. It sells millions across Europe and becomes one of the decade's most recognizable novelty hits. The duo, both veterans of London's vibrant session scene, appear on numerous TV shows, from Top of the Pops to variety specials featuring Hollywood hosts. Critics mock its childlike lyrics, but its upbeat bubblegum pop arrangement guarantees radio play. The track remains a cult favorite among collectors of kitsch music. Next, the 1970s streaking craze races onto the charts and into pop history. Moving over to number 8, The Streak, Ray Stevens, 1974. Comedian-singer Ray Stevens turns the college campus streaking fad into a novelty single that races to number 1 on Billboard in May 1974. Written and recorded in Nashville, the song features rapid-fire spoken verses, a chorus of "Don't Look Ethel," and sound effects mimicking running feet. It sells over 1 million copies in its first month, earning a gold disc. Stevens, already known for hits like Guitarzan, promotes the single with comedic performances on TV variety shows, cementing his image as pop's resident prankster. Despite its silliness, the track captures a genuine cultural moment. Streaking incidents had made headlines from the Academy Awards to sporting events. Stevens later admits he wrote it in just 15 minutes after hearing news reports. Next, Beethoven's most famous symphony gets turned into a disco anthem. Let's get to number 7, A Fifth of Beethoven, Walter Murphy, 1976. In 1976, jazz pianist Walter Murphy rearranges Beethoven's Fifth Symphony into a disco track and releases it as A Fifth of Beethoven. Initially a sleeper hit, it soars to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in October, boosted by its inclusion in the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack, which sells over 40 million copies. Critics accuse Murphy of cheapening classical music, but the song becomes a pop culture phenomenon, introducing disco to classical audiences. Murphy records most of the track himself, layering strings and horns over a relentless 4/4 beat. Though labeled a novelty, it earns him Grammy nominations and long-term success as a composer, later scoring shows like Family Guy. The next entry is a disco hit from pop's reigning kings, one that critics found just as excessive as its title. Dropping into number 6, Tragedy, Bee Gees, 1979. In February 1979, the Bee Gees released Tragedy, a song born in the same week they write Too Much Heaven and Shadow Dancing. Recorded at Criteria Studios in Miami, it blends disco's high-gloss production with rock dynamics, explosive choruses, sharp falsettos, and a dramatic key change. The single hits number 1 in both the US and UK, selling over 3 million copies worldwide. Critics at the time call it melodrama overkill, but fans embrace it as peak Bee Gees. Its distinctive explosion sound effect comes from producer Albie Galutin, blowing into a microphone while manipulating a synthesizer. Though it tops charts, the song marks the tail end of disco's dominance before the 1979 backlash. Next, disco gets its quirkiest bass groove and wins a Grammy before vanishing into one-hit wonder history. Let's spin into number 5, Boogie Oogie Oogie, A Taste of Honey, 1978. Released in June 1978, Boogie Oogie Oogie becomes a summer anthem. Written by band members Janice Marie Johnson and Perry Kibble, it's built on a funk-driven bass line recorded in just 2 takes. The song hits number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in September, stays there for 3 weeks, and sells over 2 million copies. Johnson's lead bass playing is groundbreaking for a female-fronted group in the disco era. The track earns them the 1979 Grammy for Best New Artist, an award many believe carries a career curse. By 1980, the group's follow-ups stall, and they fade from mainstream charts. Despite its shallow lyrics, the bass riff becomes one of disco's most sampled lines in hip-hop and dance music decades later. The next entry proves that innuendo wrapped in roller skating sweetness can dominate radio and spark bands. Rolling on to number 4, Brand New Key, Melanie, 1971. Folk singer Melanie Safka writes Brand New Key in just 15 minutes after a bike ride in the suburbs. Released in late 1971, it's an instant hit, topping the Billboard Hot 100 for 3 weeks. The song's playful lyrics about roller skates and a brand new key are widely interpreted as sexual innuendo, prompting bans from some radio stations. Melanie insists it's about youthful freedom, but winks at the double meanings in interviews. Selling over 3 million copies worldwide, it cements her as a pop-folk crossover star. Its stripped-down production contrasts with the lush arrangements dominating the charts, making it stand out even more. Up next is a chart topper sung by a fictional cartoon band, and it outsells many real ones.
I asked your mother if you were at home. She said yes, but you weren't alone.
Heading to number 3, Sugar Sugar, The Archies, 1969, 70s chart life. A manufactured pop group from the Archie Show TV cartoon records Sugar Sugar in 1969, written by Jeff Barry and Andy Kim. The vocals are by Ron Dante and Tony Wine, backed by New York session musicians. The single tops the Billboard Hot 100 for 4 weeks, sells over 6 million copies worldwide, and becomes the top single of 1969. In the early 1970s, reissues and radio play keep it alive, especially on Bubblegum pop compilations. The track has no live band, no tours, pure studio creation. Critics dismiss it as kid stuff, but it outsells singles by the Beatles and Rolling Stones that year. It also wins the first ever Record of the Year award from the RIAA. Next, an Oscar-winning actor sings a 7-minute epic about cake, and it somehow becomes a disco hit.
I candy girl, and you got me wanting you.
Dropping into number 2, MacArthur Park, Richard Harris, 1968, 70s influence. In 1968, Irish actor Richard Harris, fresh from Hollywood films like Camelot, records MacArthur Park, a Jimmy Webb composition originally offered to the association. The 7-minute track, with its surreal imagery, someone left the cake out in the rain, is recorded with the Wrecking Crew at Sound Recorders in Hollywood. Released in April 1968, it peaks at number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100, selling over 1 million copies and earning a Grammy nomination. Critics are baffled. Some call it genius, others the most ludicrous hit ever. Harris admits he never fully understood the lyrics but loved its abstract poetry. The song's legacy explodes again in 1978 when Donna Summer's disco version hits number 1 in the US, stretching to 8 minutes and earning her a Grammy. That version sells over 2 million copies, becoming one of the longest-running disco tracks to top the chart. Jimmy Webb reveals the lyrics were inspired by a breakup with Susan Horton, often seen lunching with him in Los Angeles as MacArthur Park. The melting cake? A metaphor for a relationship ruined beyond repair. Next comes a global farewell ballad that sold in staggering numbers, but its sugary sentiment still splits opinion decades later.
I will take my life into my hands, and I will use. I will win the worship in their eyes, and I will lose.
Closing at number 1, Seasons in the Sun, Terry Jacks, 1974. Canadian singer-producer Terry Jacks adapts Seasons in the Sun from Jacques Brel's 1961 French song Le Moribond. English lyrics are written by Rod McEwen in 1963, softening Brel's biting tone into a sentimental goodbye from a dying narrator. Jax records it in late 1973 in Vancouver, originally intending it for the Beach Boys, but releases it himself when they pass. Issued in early 1974, it spends 3 weeks at #1 on Billboard, sells over 14 million copies worldwide, and becomes the best-selling single ever by a Canadian artist at the time. In the UK, it holds the #1 spot for 4 weeks, moving nearly 1 million units there alone. Its simple arrangement, acoustic guitar, soft strings, Jack's plaintive vocal, appeals to pop audiences but earns scorn from critics who find it cloying. Despite derision, the song's cultural reach is undeniable, covered by Nirvana, Westlife, and countless others. Jax later leaves music to focus on environmental activism, rarely performing it again.
The birds are singing in the sky, now that the spring is in the air.
If you enjoyed these shocking 1970s chart disasters, explore our other videos for more unbelievable music history. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and join us for the next wild countdown.